Next to her, Councilman Bill Greenlee. Next to me, Alan Dom, Sherelle Parker, and again, Bobby Heenan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to make a brief statement before we bring up the panel for questions. In 2015, two large commercial bakeries, Amorosa and Mondelez, left Philadelphia and left nearly 450 people out of a job. These are experienced men and women with specialized background in food manufacturing, individuals who would be ready and qualified to fill jobs should a new manufacturing open a door here in the city of Philadelphia. But the question is, how can we attract commercial food manufacturers to Philadelphia? We have the workforce, but we need more. That is the goal of my proposed UNO tax break, to create and incentivize an incentive for commercial food manufacturing to move to the city of Philadelphia and to employ Philadelphia residents. For manufacturing, this tax break is attractive because of its predictability. It can be easily calculated based on the assessed value of the property. The exemption is for new business or, with Councilwoman Parker amendment, expanding business. It is an investment in a growing local economy. This bill represents small but yet targeted effort to respond to major job loss in our city. But it is also an important part of a broader goal of supporting the manufacturing sector in Philadelphia using the 2013 manufacturing growth strategy for Philadelphia as the actual foundation. It bears repeating that manufacturing jobs are good jobs. They have few barriers to entry, tech workers with new skills, and more importantly, other good wages and benefits. These are the kinds of family-sustaining jobs that build a better and bigger and more diverse middle class. And as a city, we must be willing to find ways to get them and to keep them right here in our city. We have had a difficult time supporting existing manufacturing companies and attracting new ones. I will continue to work, and I will continue to finish the work that we started together under the previous administration with the Manufacturing Task Force. The Mayor's Office of Industry and Manufacturing, the Commerce Department, and other economic development partners to ensure that we are doing everything we can to make Philadelphia a location of choice and a place to grow companies that provide jobs with family-sustaining wages. I know that we have some changes to make and good work to do, but I know we can get there. So, Madam Chair, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any statement to make before we call on our panel? Seeing none, we call forth the Commerce Director, Harold T. Epps. Thank you very much, Mr. Epps. I'm glad you came right before our budget process because we really get our money's worth, and certainly we're happy to have you. And thank you both.
Well, Councilwoman Blackwell, it's always good to come before this body as I continue to learn how government works.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to you, Councilman Heenan, and other members of the Finance Committee. As stated before, my name is Harold Epps. I am the Director of Commerce, and I'm here today to testify on Bill 160248, introduced by Councilman Heenan, which would provide an exclusion from the use and occupancy tax for certain bakeries and related confectionery product of manufacturing companies. I am pleased to support the Majority Leader's effort to stabilize and grow the important food processing sector of our local manufacturing economy. Philadelphia is home to a broad and diverse group of manufacturers that employ about 20,000 local residents in family-sustaining jobs. While many of these businesses are stable or growing, there continue to be pressures to consider lower-cost locations. Food manufacturers, like bakeries that require expensive equipment investments to remain competitive, too often make the decision to move out of our city, taking hundreds of jobs with them. As stated earlier, in the last year, 2 bakeries have moved out of the city, taking jobs with them. But we share the sponsor's view that it doesn't necessarily have to be this way. Bill number 160248 highlights the need to address this loss of bakery jobs by encouraging new bakeries to expand into the city and even reactivating some facilities that have become vacant. We believe that in combination with low-cost financing and other incentives, targeted tax relief can be an integral part of our strategy to stabilize and grow our food manufacturing sector. A use and occupancy approach presents one option among several, and we look to weigh those more closely in the coming weeks and months. We stand ready to work with the sponsor to develop the best possible tax legislation to support his crucial goal of providing relief and incentive to this sector. In closing, I would like to recognize and thank Councilman Heenan for his tireless support for the manufacturing sector. Through his leadership of the Mayor's Manufacturing Task Force, his countless relationships in the Philadelphia's manufacturing sector, and his continued partnership with the Commerce Department, Councilman Heenan has been one of the city's strongest champions for keeping and growing jobs in the manufacturing sector. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions? Councilman Dom?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to make sure, any idea or projection of revenue that might be lost if this gets passed?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Any idea of the actual revenue that we're talking about that we won't collect?
I will defer to the Revenue Department.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Marissa Waxman, First Deputy Revenue Commissioner. So in looking at this bill, it is as drafted currently for new businesses, so it is hard to estimate what the revenue loss would be because there's a real range among taxpayers of what their liability is.
So our current revenue doesn't go down, this is just for new coming in?
Yeah, as the bill is drafted, it is for new entities, yes.
And so this, I just want to make sure I understand, this would exclude a new manufacturer of bakery goods or whatever from paying use and occupancy taxes?
Yeah, it has lists out certain NAICS codes, industry classifications that would this would be targeted to.
And how are we dealing with the existing, I'm going to use Tasty Cake as an example, they're paying use and occupancy taxes. How do we deal with that situation?
So one thing that's important to remember about the use and occupancy tax is that it's typically paid by the landlord of the building or the owner of the building, not necessarily the tenant, so that will come into play. But my understanding is it's drafted, this is just targeted for new, not the existing, so their tax bills would remain the same.
And as stated in the bill, there's more work that we will do with Councilman Heenan over the summer to finalize the bill.
Use and occupancy taxes are in place for what reason, really? Why did that tax even happen?
So it is a tax on the commercial use of an occupancy of real estate. One of the features of the Pennsylvania Constitution is something called the Uniformity Clause that requires us to have the same tax rate for all classes of real estate. So, without getting into the history, it is something that sort of is a tax that is just on a certain category, the use of a certain category of real estate.
So it's become a tax that's burdened the ability of businesses to operate in the city.
I'm sure that all businesses would prefer to not pay taxes in the city.
But if the real estate was assessed correctly, you probably wouldn't need it.
It depends. It depends what your goal is.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Chair notes that Councilman David O. is here as well. Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Always when we're talking about taxes, there are winners and there are losers. Who are the winners and losers in this proposed measure? We know who the winners are going forward, but who are the potential losers?
Well, we have not finalized the bill, but if there were to be any dollars that would be exempt, I believe the school district would be one of the people that would get less revenue. I believe that's correct.
Correct.
And so that being stated for the record, the administration believes in its wisdom that it is acceptable, it's okay, it's, that there's an even yield with the school district losing, but it's offset by the prospective jobs that this particular measure could incentivize.
Well, as the councilman stated, and my testimony stated, that we will work together over the summer to finalize the bill, so it's not final yet, and we have to sort out where that balance is. But the intent is we need to be more strategic and intentional and aggressive about recruiting and retaining manufacturing jobs, particularly when we've got such an abundance of our population that do not have the educational attainment to participate in the higher education economy that we're building. So these manufacturing jobs are critical for a good portion of our workforce that is best suited for manufacturing jobs.
I agree with that 2,000%. And too often we end up in a place where both sides are right.
You're right.
And so
so we've got to find that happy medium.
Yes. So I join members of this committee who will remain interested in what that ultimate equation looks like, and that it would be asked by the sponsor of the bill that would be shared with members of the committee as you go down this road.
We concur.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Chair notes that Councilman Mark Squilla is here as well. Questions from members of the committee?
I got a question.
Councilman O?
Sorry. Thank you very much. I do have a question, just for clarification. I apologize for coming in late. I tried to listen, but I know you always miss something on your way up. This is an exclusion, particularly for commercial food manufacturing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And when it says specifically engaged specifically in sugar and confectionery product manufacturing, I think of bakeries. Does that include soda?
From the commerce perspective, in our conversation with the councilman's office, the answer would be no, it does not.
And if I may add, just for the NAICS code listed, there is I believe, a separate
Right, from that code.
For that code that would apply to soda and flavor concentrate manufacturers that I believe is not one of the listed ones in this bill.
Okay. So I know this is on the legislative side, so thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Chair notes that Councilwoman Cindy Bass is here, so all members of the Finance Committee are present. Councilman Greenlee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quickly, and following up to Councilwoman Reynolds Brown's question, I guess, is it fair to say another way of looking at this, since it's new businesses that will be given this waiver, that right now the school district wouldn't lose anything from what they have, because right now they're not getting that funding?
That is correct.
And if new businesses take advantage of this, there also would be other tax money coming in from the workers, wage tax, whatever, right? Correct?
That is also correct.
So they're in the sense the school district doesn't get money, but they don't lose money, correct? Right. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Point of information.
Yes,
To
Councilman Brown.
To the sponsor of the bill, Councilman Heenan, the 450 people that regretfully ended up out of work, were we able to do anything for them on their behalf? And do they become first, do we go to them first for new manufacturing opportunities that may come to the city to try to make them whole again?
Well, let me
I'm sorry, I was a little distracted. Was your question directed at me or the Commerce?
Well, to either of you who might know what happened with those 450 citizens who ended up out of work, do they become the first pool of prospective employees that the city goes to in the future for the next manufacturing opportunity?
Well, Chris, I hope so.
let me
But I
just-
believe the Commerce Department, working with the state and the programs that they have for retraining and job placement. So I believe it was the city and state have been working closely with both of the manufacturers itself to offer, work between offering early retirement and job placement in other sectors of the field, or training to be placed in other job sectors.
Okay.
So what those numbers actually are at this point, I don't know, but I know that there was a team with the Commerce Department and the state working together to try to, place them in their programs that currently exist and have been existing with the Commonwealth for quite time.
Very well.
I'll just add to that. Dwayne Bum, Deputy Commerce Director. Councilman, you're right that when large companies, manufacturers in these two cases, when they close, they are required to give us a notice of closure. It's called a warn notice. They give it to the city and they give it to the Commonwealth. And when we receive those two notices, as we do with all others, we immediately contact the Philadelphia Works, the local workforce development agency, as well as send a copy to the state rapid response team.
I see.
Those are the two groups that, in fact, will then immediately mobilize to help those impacted employees who are, at that point, scheduled to lose their jobs within 60 days, to help them to find other employment, get their resumes together, to sort of set them up for unemployment in the meantime.
And so then does this Commerce Department then circle back to see what the real tangible yield has been of that effort? I mean, where's the loop close on those 450, in this case, 450 employees? Is there some mechanism in place in the department that tells you X number of people were laid off, X number of people were trained, X number of people remain unemployed?
We would get that information from Philadelphia Works, because these are people who would all be put into into unemployment, and therefore, as long as they're in unemployment, that means they haven't found other sort of alternate employment.
Then. Very helpful. Thank you.
Councilman Heenan?
And Councilman Dunn.
Thank you. Councilman Dom?
Just a question. The two large bakeries that left Philadelphia, I know one was Amoroso. Was this the major reason, the UNO, or were there other reasons that we should be addressing also?
We understood that, and we've worked with Amoroso for several years. One of the primary issues that the company had was their existing facility they were unable to expand it because they were on all sides basically surrounded by neighborhood, and couldn't identify a new location that met their sort of requirements. I would sort of say, ultimately got an offer they couldn't refuse in New Jersey. So there was an incentive package that they received that sort of probably was the primary reason for the move.
So the point is that New Jersey is basically stealing our businesses by giving them better incentives to go over there.
They have very good incentives.
So we need to get competitive. Thank you.
I cannot let this pass.
Now,
You will hear that theme again. The governor of New Jersey has got strategic intent to plow significant dollars into southeast New Jersey, primarily Camden. And so we will see this scenario play itself out a few times in the future. And some will win and some we're not going to win.
question, the city, just want to state it for the record, I mean, the city tried to intervene to save the two businesses, is that correct?
Yes, in the case of Amoroso, we worked with the company, a family-owned business, for years to find them alternate sites and to actually work with them on could they expand internally on the site that they already owned. And in the case of Mondelez, the city and the state worked together with the company, but we had very little notice that they were making alternate plans, where they told us that they were choosing between Philadelphia and 2 other mid-Atlantic locations, existing locations, and sort of the decision was made very shortly thereafter.
So if it was a surprise, at least with Mondelez,
Right,
sounds like
Mondelez
we were
would have
trying
been-
to work with Amoroso. How can we improve our outreach with manufacturers in the sector, the base, so that we can see some of these things coming, if indeed they're going to come, which we hope not, and how could we try to get to them before it's too late?
I think we have to sort of have ongoing and open communication with all of our manufacturers to always sort of make sure they are aware of what services we can provide, and to solicit really on one-on-one meetings in many cases whether they have any issues that we could help with, which is maybe the indicator that they're thinking about something else. Often, though, what is happening with some of these manufacturers is that they are no longer like Philadelphia-based and family-owned businesses. They are, in fact, large consolidations. And so Mondelez acquiring Kraft and then consolidating actually globally their facilities. The folks who were at the local level at that facility would not have known anything about that. We've sort of learned from their Chicago office that when they made the decision.
So we now recently, over the last couple of years, created an Office of Manufacturing. This year, changing some of the priorities around a little bit more and refining. And we have the Office of Industry and Manufacturing, which is broader, which captures a lot of industry as well. Are there any other similar situations that are on the horizon right now, and how can we help?
So I would say that you are correct. The manufacturing task force, another task force we are putting in place, have to be more externally focused to do the outreach to ensure that we are ahead of the game, and we're also looking at all the data that we can to predict and forecast what's going to come up as possibilities that we need to consider. Make no mistake about it, states and cities are getting increasingly competitive about recruiting and retention, and we've got to up our game, if you will, to make sure that we're on top of it. One of the things that you all can do is, though it's been done this year, is next year, of course, we could use more resources.
Well, we're going to try to get it done this year. At least it's one of my priorities, and I think, which I share with most members of City Council. Where do you see the growth opportunities in manufacturing industry in the city over the next decade?
Well, one of the things is an opportunity is our existing manufacturers do little to no exporting. And so we just finished hiring what's the right title? International Business Development Officer, for the sake of it. And her task is to work with the Office of Manufacturing to get a higher level of interest of those manufacturers to export. My little slogan is that we can export Bassett, what is it? Bassett? Whose ice cream is it? If we can export Bassett's ice cream, we can export other things. And we're only exporting 1% of our possibility. So that's one opportunity. The second is there's a lot of new called makers type manufacturing that's opening. We've got to be aggressive in supporting them as they start up and supporting them as they grow. So the traditional manufacturers, export's one opportunity, startup and makers is another, among others.
I think I want to add to the record, if we could, Drake, I think bakery, we're, at some point that we're looking to expand. To come to the city of Philadelphia. I think they may have been here at one point, and they're veteran-owned business. So it may be a direction that we can outreach to and see if they want to take a look at the opportunities that we have here in the city of Philadelphia, and whatever we come up with here working throughout the summer. It might be something that we can incentivize and attract new business with new employees, or actually new employees, Philadelphia employees, that, we can, put on our rolls and add to our wage tax.
And it's not direct manufacturing, but there's also increased opportunity in logistics and distribution. There are a number of companies that find Philadelphia advantageous for their mid-Atlantic and Northeast distribution and warehousing, because we are at the center of the transportation node for the Northeast. So we already see some of those things that are coming at us, and some of those that we're pursuing.
Thank you. No further questions.
Councilman O or Councilman Parker, would you like to speak?
Because I'm going to talk about the amendment.
All right.
I'll yield to Councilman Bass. Just got here.
Thank you, and then Councilman Dom.
Thank you. Well, I just have a quick question, and I think you answered some of it through Councilman Heenan's questions. But I was wondering, in terms of when, you said the projection or the forecast was that, New Jersey's governor was going to try to steal some of our businesses. Are we trying to steal some of theirs, I guess, is my question. And what more, but put a little bit differently, what are we doing to try to pull some other businesses in through the Commerce Department? And knowing that that's the projection that, we have, folks who are out there trying to poach what it is that we have, how is Commerce working, I guess, to insulate them, to, make sure that those businesses have every advantage that's here? So you answered some of it, but I don't know if there was anything further that you wanted to add.
Well, let me just balance the scale. So when you talk New Jersey, you got to talk Pennsylvania, because what they're bringing, they're bringing an entire state portfolio of resources. So we work very closely with the Commonwealth to make sure that we bring in their entire benefit package. But sometime last year, during the last administration, the governor of Florida came to Pennsylvania, and basically said, come on to Florida, I'll give you whatever you want. So I'll just give you one example of where it can be a challenge. Our basketball team took its practice facility to Pennsylvania, $75 million. Well, that wasn't a good deal financially.
To Jersey?
Yeah. They will regret, that was a good financial deal.
It was a good financial deal for them.
Yeah. $75 million for 20 jobs or 30 jobs, that's just not good business. And so if one of those come along, we're going to say, let it go.
Okay.
So sometimes you got to just say it's not good financial sense. We will be aggressive about those that make good financial sense, and we won't be with those that are irresponsible. And Camden is in such dire strait that sometimes they're going to make some that we deem to be not in our best interest for the state or for the city. Because it's all about jobs. It's all about jobs that are going to pay taxes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. One other question. The New Jersey issue, which is everyone's talking about it. Do we have a effort to make sure that we win versus losing? Because I will say this, in business, there's one thing about the economics, there's also about the marketing and the image and the message that it sends. And I will say, I was saddened that we didn't get the Forbes 30 under 30. I thought even if it was $2 million, we should have done that, because it sends the right message. The Sixers going to South Jersey, I know the economics are bad, but sends the wrong message. So sometimes it's not just the money, it's also the messaging about our region or in our city. So I know that you like to win.
I do.
You do. So I'd like you to think about this, maybe come back to us with, what do we have to do to make sure we blow their doors off? Because I don't want to lose these companies in the city.
I will only take that under advisement and not respond.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman O.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. So I do appreciate, the challenges that our city faces, and under the new leadership of the mayor and yourself as Commerce Director, the challenges I think are that we have to come up with a overall plan for this administration of how we're going to approach business. What I mean is that there are a lot of very good competing interests. Sometimes they are in conflict with one another. And that's fine as long as we understand what we weigh, the weigh and balance of what we gain and what we lose. But at least in my meetings with Nabisco, Mongolese, which were in part, I think I attended at least one meeting arranged by Councilman Bobby Heenan. They said that they were reducing their lines of production and would further reduce in response to what the city was doing, particularly looking at, I think, benefits, wages, and if any product taxes were going to be introduced, meaning the soda tax, meaning that, they make a decision in all 50 states and overseas where's the best place for them to be. We have the weight of it because they're here, but they increase or decrease their lines of production. At least that's my recollection. People may have heard something different. But, my concern now is how does it fit within what we're trying to do in terms of jobs if, we are trying to establish a tax policy. And what does the soda tax do to manufacturers when they produce a product that may be taxed? A soda tax, a sugary bakery tax, a potato chip tax, or whatever. And that is within the context of trying to compete for business.
So let me start by saying I am very encouraged and optimistic about the ability for Philadelphia to be proactive, strategic, and intentional about recruiting new businesses to Philadelphia and retaining the majority of our businesses. We are talking about the one or two that are at risk, but we got a list of at least a dozen right now that we're in dialogue and conversations that are hundreds, in some cases, high hundreds, maybe even 1,000 jobs that are high potential, that are in various phases of negotiation. We're also saying to many of our suburban employers, because of the way in which talent wants to be housed today in cities rather than suburbs, that if they don't have a Philadelphia branch or a satellite office, they need to open one. And we're finding an increasing number of companies that want to do that. So that's part of our strategic initiatives that we're working on. As it relates to your question about the beverage manufacturers, well, it probably would not be a surprise to you that they are outrageously opposed to the soda tax. As much about Philadelphia as it is about the nation, because if Philadelphia goes, others are likely to follow. And those between Pepsi and Coke, probably, 1,500 jobs, that sound about right? That if the tax or any part of it passes, they're probably threatened and idle, and they may, over time, do something. But I'm a part of the administration. I support what's being advocated for, because I think of a whole that's bigger than those jobs. But they've got to do what's best for them, and I think that the administration and the council's got to do what's best for Philadelphia. But overall, I think the outlook for job creation in Philadelphia is very good. I will go back to the statement that's been made often, but we've got to change the culture of educational and degree attainment, and it's not a 4-year degree, it's any kind of degree, because increasingly all of our jobs require that they have some kind of certificate and or degree. And that's one of the problems that we have today that we got to work on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Then we're going to call on Councilwoman Parker for her remarks.
Thank Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to each of you. Let me just start for the record and note, I'm really sort of just want to provide some context to John Liss's testimony that we'll hear in a few seconds from the owner of Michael's Bakery. But I want to just start by thanking Councilman Heenan for introducing the legislation to create jobs and stimulate workforce development. But Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, I think when you spoke earlier and you asked your infamous question that I'm always prepared to hear you ask, that always makes good sense, and that is, who are the winners and who are the losers. And as Councilman Heenan and I, talked some time ago, when he talked about this legislation, and I knew he was working on it to give new commercial bakeries an exemption from the use and occupancy tax for a 10-year period, I said to myself, what about Michael's Bakery? Michael's Bakery is located in the 9th. It was founded in 1898. It has 150 employees, and it's family owned and managed. So how do we find a way to ensure that existing companies in the city of Philadelphia that are building new facilities and or acquiring facilities, and now we think about our neighborhood commercial corridors, acquiring new facilities that have been unoccupied for at least a year. So I was thankful to you, to our Commerce Director, Epps, for just noting that this legislation is something that Commerce Department, the administration, the legislative body will work on specifying the details in the future. But when I thought about our neighborhoods and bakeries like Michael's that's growing, and full disclosure, and here's my bias, council lady, I think about Denise's all the time, and I wanted to see Denise's expand, and I wanted one, on Wadsworth and even Germantown and Broad Street, and they could never, aside from the crisis that we know they endured, they could never sort of get the incentives necessary in order for them to expand. And so when Councilman Heenan and I talked about this, that was something that was of concern. What about existing companies that are growing? Like, how do we find a way to incentivize their growth and retaining them here in the city of Philadelphia? So one, I just wanted to give some comments before he comes up to testify, because it is is a very interesting issue. But when we think about them building new facilities, that is the creation of new jobs. So it's kind of like the old-time Philadelphians who stayed here during the lean years, feeling like all of the incentives that are being produced and offered as we think about economic development include the future. But what about those of us who've had some skin in the game for some time? So I just thank you, Madam Chair, for your latitude and allowing me to provide some context before Michael's testimony. And Councilman Heenan, thank you also.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. We'll now call John Liss, Michael's Bakery. You've had a great introduction already, so we'll ask you to identify yourself and begin your testimony.
Okay. My name's John Liss, and I'm the president and owner of Michael's Bakery, and I'm here to support Councilwoman Parker's amendment to Councilman Heenan's bill, providing for tax relief, specifically UNO tax relief, exemptions for commercial and industrial bakeries. Michael's Bakery currently has plans and is reviewing plans to expand its current facility, and feel that we should have the same benefits as others in terms of tax relief. Brief history: Michael's Bakery was established in 1898. It's been family-owned since my family since 1948, and the factory is located on Rising Sun Avenue in the Northeast. We provide employment for nearly 200 people. We've hired approximately 30 new employees in the past 12 months. 98% of our people live in Philadelphia, and we're a very diverse workforce, ethnically, racially, and gender-wise. Around 20% of our employees have more than 20 years of seniority, which is very unusual in today's world. Most of our workers belong to the Bakery, Confectionery, and Tobacco Workers Union Local 6, and we provide benefits for full-time employees and their families in terms of medical, dental, vacation, personal holidays, disability, legal holidays, etc. Annually, we invest in training our people significantly because it's a very important part of food safety in today's manufacturing environment. We also invest in equipment in our facility in excess of $1 million a year. And unfortunately, we have suffered losses during several years, but we've found ways to overcome that, and we're on a steady pace right now. So what has happened to the industrial or commercial landscape in Philadelphia? We heard about Amoroso's Bakery. They've laid off over 200 people, and the other jobs have, even the ones that were here who aren't part of the ones who were laid off, like the drivers, they just moved to New Jersey. They're working out of New Jersey now. So the impact is really even greater. Even though they didn't lose their jobs, the revenue is going to New Jersey. There was a baking company called Philadelphia Baking Company, which was on Grant Avenue in the Northeast, and they closed up. And that cost about 150 jobs in Philadelphia. Nabisco, as you know, 300 jobs. Hostess Bakery, and you mentioned Drake's. Hostess actually owns Drake's. And they closed up a few years ago, and that was 300 jobs, and they were located on Bluegrass Road. Just as an aside, I guess this is indicative of what's going on in the industry. Stroman Bakery, which is in Norristown right outside the city, and a lot of their employees did work in the city, they recently closed up just last year, and that was 266 jobs. So in reality, Michael's Bakery is the only industrial bakery left that is privately owned in Philadelphia. Tasty Cake was bought by a company from the South called Flowers Baking Company, and they actually saved them from going out of business. So I feel that Michael's Bakery is a competitive disadvantage, and even in the case of Tasty Cake, I'm not certain, and I'm certainly not an expert, but they're located in a Keystone Opportunity Improvement Zone. So I believe they have an abatement on business privilege tax, net profit tax, sales and use tax, real property tax, and use and occupancy tax. So I'm the only one who's paying. I really feel, and I've certainly heard a lot of questions asked here, which were very insightful, that the mayor, the city council, the Commerce Department really also need to focus on existing bakeries in Philadelphia. And you can't wait until the businesses leave and then ask yourself what happened on our watch. So in closing, I'm here to support both the bill and the amendment, especially the amendment. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or concerns for this legislation? All right, we will now then conclude this part of our gathering, our hearing, and go into our stated meeting. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker for a motion on the amendment to Bill number 160248.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I offer an amendment to Bill number 160248. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to the members of the committee. I move that the amendment to Bill number 160248 be adopted.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to Bill number 160248 be adopted. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and then the motion carries. An amendment to Bill number 160248 has been adopted. It has been moved and properly seconded that this amended bill be reported from this committee with the favorable recommendation, and further, that the rules of council be suspended so as to permit first reading at our next session of council. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. An amended report from this committee with a favorable recommendation is passed, and it will permit first reading at our next session of council. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thanks. That's good.
Thank you, Councilman.